This is me deep bowing to all of you. For all of you light workers who are supporting what we're doing, you are the volunteers. You are Big Love Weekend. And I see so many familiar faces who've been involved since this kicked off, since Jace kicked this off in December. We've had a whole bunch of different events. And it's so, for me, it's such an honor to be here talking about my own journey, but also really this weekend, what is it about? Celebrating all the work you've already done. So many of you know God's Love We Deliver is an amazing organization that's been around for 30 years that delivers, I think it's 5,800 meals a day. Somebody, is that about right? Yeah. For our brothers and sisters in New York City and the environ who are not well enough to shop and or cook for themselves. And these are medically tailored. It's not just like crappy food. This is amazing food, actually made with love. It's so mind-blowing to me how many volunteers it takes and how much money it takes to do this, and yet it's happening. So Jace came up with this idea 4 years ago of Big Love Weekend because she wanted to give back. We're not in the transition yet. Wanted to give back. So she took her birthday as a way to actually create this weekend party to raise money, all for God's love. And what an honor and a privilege it is this year that we get to celebrate her birth and her rebirth. So my sister from another mister, where are you? So gorgeous, super exciting, amazing, and how she invites all of us to get the benefit of doing this work. So far to date, Big Love Weekend has raised $145,000 for God's love. Woo, let's hear it for that. I mean, amazing. And you guys are all a super important part of this. So Donna already beautifully, gorgeously, as she does everything, because how could she do it any other way, set the intention. But I do want to ask you, before I get moving, to just close your eyes and take a deep breath, because this weekend is for you guys. This day is a healing day for you. So I want you to take a deep breath and drop your attention inward and just focus your mind on your heart chakra. And we're just going to take a few deep breaths into the heart chakra. And I just want you to feel any hardness that's around the heart chakra just softening with your breath, coming to this day with an open heart. And I want you to put your focus on your third eye, which is right between your eyebrows and about 1 millimeter up. Take a nice deep breath into your third eye, softening that chakra, coming to this day and this weekend with an open mind, so that anything that you may need to hear for your own healing, you will be able to recognize and heal. So let's take another deep breath and exhale. And I want you guys to gently open your eyes, bring yourself back to the room, and I want you to get really comfortable. Because can I tell you, I was sitting on these mats last night, not that comfortable. So if you want to lay down, if you want to lean backs against each other and like not be holding yourself up with your core for the next 25 minutes, that would be cool. And if you're fine, because you're all stronger than me, excellent, we're good to go. So I wanted to tell you guys, I started this morning, like I start every morning, with my spiritual practice and in meditation. So before I meditate, I always ask the 3 questions that I was taught by my mentor, Dr. Deepak Chopra, which is, who am I? What do I really want? And what is my dharma? How can I heal? How can I help? How can I serve myself and others with my unique and special gifts and talents? So every day I start with those questions and take a deep breath, and I exhale those questions out into the universe. And then I sit in stillness and silence, listening for the answers of how I can be of service today. What is it that I should be doing today? Where am I putting my energy today? And that's a part of my practice on a daily basis. So for me, doing this work this weekend, God's Love We Deliver, really resonates because of the way that I was raised. I had a mother whose mantra was, if you can help someone in need, you must. Not even that you should. You would think you should, you still had an option. You must. Wow, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. So I spent a lot of time in my life with my mother, whether she is teaching a very proud farmer in her little teeny town in upstate New York, like population, like 40 people, how to read clandestinely, like in the back of the library. I'm sure people thought they were having an affair, but she was just teaching them how to read. And it took her a really long time, P.S. I was like, Mom, it's 4 years. You're still teaching Dave how to read? She was like, well, you know, he's telling me about his life. I was like, okay, can he read though? I'm just curious. He was like, no, he can totally read. He could read after year 1. I was like, oh, and you just kept meeting with him. She's like, yeah, he's my friend. I like him. I was like, oh, you're cute. So either that, or she's a deacon in her Methodist church, or volunteering at the soup kitchen, or befriending the only outwardly gay teenager in this teeny little town. Became like BFFs with my mother. So that makes, you can see how my life would make a lot of sense in that way, that being of service, to me, it all makes a lot of sense. And my mother is someone who taught me how to do it as a way of life, not as a box to check. Like, oh, I make money, I feel guilty, let me do something nice for a day. This is a mindset of how to actually be in the world in a different way. I feel incredibly connected to my human family. I feel responsible to and for people I don't know. And I think a lot of people who do a lot of volunteering feel that way. When I was leaving my career as a talent agent to become a psychotherapist and a transformation coach, I was leaving this career that nobody really understood why I was leaving this career, especially my father, who was like, wait, what are you doing? You're quitting your job running a talent agency to become a social worker, why? So he felt like, you know, it must have been something that he had done, like why? But I got to the point, this pinnacle in my career, and realized that I had been actually searching for a feeling. And then when I got there, oh my God, that feeling wasn't there. And of course there was a lot of hurdles to get to before that. So I still was hopeful, like that feeling is gonna be there once I make this amount of money. That feeling is gonna be there once I'm the boss, definitely when I'm the boss, totally. That feeling, I can't wait, it's totally gonna be there. So then I'm running a talent agency in my early 30s, and can you guess? No feeling, that feeling was not there. And the more I was on my own evolutionary path, the less I felt okay being in this business. I was like, why am I making Naomi Campbell richer than she already is? Why? There has got to be something better I could be doing with my life than this. And even though it required taking this big leap in this scary thing, I had to do it. So one thing that most agents, when they decide they don't want to be an agent anymore, what they do is they decide they're going to become acting teachers. I'd never been an actor, had no idea how to do it, but I was like, I'm totally doing that. So I somehow managed to get myself as an acting teacher at NYU, Tisch School of the Arts. Literally, and I'm not kidding, no idea how that happened, but it did. And I knew about the business, of course, so that's how I sold myself. Like, oh, I'll teach them the business of the business. Won't this be great? So about 4 years into my 15 years teaching there, I get a little note in my box saying that the dean would like to have a meeting with me. I'm like, that cannot be good. Why? Like, I'm thinking, what did I talk about? What did I say? Did I reveal something? So I go into the meeting and he was like, I want to ask you about this prerequisite that you have for your master class. So I had a class that only a small group of seniors could be in. And yes, I did have a prerequisite that I guess I didn't know I had to have approved by the administration, but I didn't. So he said, so what is this prerequisite? Can you tell me about it? And I was like, okay. So to be in my class, the seniors have to dedicate 4 hours a week to volunteering. He was like, and how is that related to them becoming great actors? And I said, listen, it's not only about them becoming great actors, right? Volunteering will help them actually live. See what it's like. So many of these kids were super privileged, and even though they were lovely, they had no clue how the other half lived. They had no clue about what it might be like to struggle, or what it was like. Their idea of giving, it was never in the trenches. It was like, yes, my parents, they buy a $10,000 table at this thing, which is super cool, and we need that as well, right? But I knew that they would benefit personally from actually doing something for someone else simply because someone needed them to do it, whatever it was. So I helped a lot of kids get placed. A lot of them were big brothers and big sisters. There was a place called The Door that a lot of them volunteered at if they didn't know, especially if they weren't from New York. So anyway, he was like, okay, sounds weird, but whatever. And he literally said, if there are any more parent inquiries, I'll just send them straight to you. So I was thinking, so I guess I can keep my prerequisite. I didn't even ask. I was like, okay, bye, thanks. So the experience that I had with those kids, though, so many of them, this is so many years ago, you guys. Oh my God, I've preserved well, but I'm older than I look. So many of them have gone on to become well-known actors in shows like Scandal and things that you know. And every time I see one of the kids that I had on Broadway or somewhere else or being interviewed, I'm so excited. But none of that holds a candle to the way that I feel when I have gotten so many emails and notes, handwritten notes, that's how long ago it was, over the years, of them saying that that weird, non-traditional experience of volunteering not only changed who they were and the way they looked at the world, many of them it changed their career path. Right? Because listen, let's be honest, how many of them are really going to make it? Like a really small percentage. I mean, at any given moment, 85% of Screen Actors Guild is unemployed. Okay, so I'm just saying that some of them then went on to actually change their careers, and that is what really made me proud. So why do we give? Right? I'm giving you all of the lofty reasons why we give, because it's the right thing to do, because it makes us feel good. It's a moral win-win, all of those things. But there's so much more to it than that. Deepak Chopra says, the fastest way to your own happiness is to make another happy. And is that why we do it? That's not even why we do it. We don't even know why we do it. Because what happens, there are so many studies out there of hard science that tell us the benefits of being kind, of being of service, of giving, simply because you can. So one of them talks about, as far back as 1979, there was a phrase that was coined. It was called the helping high, and it was describing all of the oxytocin and the feel-good, the dopamine that gets released in your brain when you're just getting your head out of your own ass and doing something for someone else simply because you can and simply because they need you to. So all of these things I understand, and as a therapist, I've employed a lot of this with clients who are depressed or very anxious. Now, of course, therapy is voluntary, so I can't make it mandatory like I could when I was a teacher, but I can strongly suggest that they volunteer starting at least 1 hour a week, or do a shift at God's Love. You don't have to be a volunteer and have every Monday from this to this. You can actually just do a shift. There's a calendar, and so I would guide people to do that at least once and see what happens for them. Because really, I couldn't actually make them do it, but I would see the shifts in their mindset. There's this great story by Gay Hendricks. Do you guys know Gay's work, anyone? Okay, so he's got the upper limit problem, I think, that he wrote. He's written a bunch of great stuff. Anyway, he talks about the fact that he was on the phone, and feel free to lay down, you guys, if you're uncomfortable by now. So just feel free, get comfortable. He was on the phone with a client who was actively suicidal. They did an emergency call, and this client, he was saying to the client, ask him what the problem was and how he was feeling. And he remembered that the client, he lived in a 2-family house, and the woman on the bottom floor was an old woman, and her porch, it was one of those old sort of wraparound porches. And this guy had mentioned like 2 or 3 times in the 1.5 years that he was seeing Gay about how this lady's porch like super depressed him, because she was an old lady, she had like nobody in her life, and the porch was really looked like that, like all those free papers that they throw on your porch. Nobody ever removed them. There were leaves and dirt and whatever. And so Gay gets this brilliant idea to say to the guy, okay, so I'm gonna wait, and you're gonna get your broom, and you're gonna go clean your neighbor's porch right now. And the guy was like, yeah, no, I'm not. And Gay was like, well, yeah, you are, because I'm not saying another word until you do. So I guess sometimes you do have to blackmail people. So the guy goes down, cleans up everything, gets rid of it. 15 minutes later, comes back up and says, hold on, I'm gonna actually mop it quick, but I'll be right back. So Gay's like, okay, apparently this is working. So he goes down, and while he's mopping, the old woman comes out. And she literally starts crying, saying no one in her whole life had done anything as kind as that for her. It was like she was seen for the first time, probably in decades. And then the story literally goes on to say, so this guy comes back. I guess he's no longer focused on not wanting to live, and a little bit more focused on, wow, I can't believe that action that took me 25 minutes to do literally changed this woman's life. And he had lived there for 1.5 years, like staying in his own lane completely. And after that, Gay goes on to talk about how he literally became like the grandson this lady didn't have, helped her get her, like just now, all love, all the time. That is a story. There are so many stories out there. So who did that benefit? That benefited both of them. And I can always see the good in being of service and doing the right thing the way that I was raised. But what I had no idea about was how it might feel if I were the person in need. It never entered my mind that there would be a time in my life when I would be on my knees, where I would be paralyzed with what was happening in my own mind that had become a prison, and how excruciating it might be to ask friends and strangers for help. So some of you may know some of this story, and I'm just going to tell you the bits and pieces that are relevant to what we're talking about. In 1997, the most important life-altering experience of my life to date happened, and I met the man who would become my husband, Victor. Some of you know him. He's the best ever still, 20 years later, so that's saying something. But Vic was a widower, and he had 3 acting out teenage sons who were so bad. And I was living on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and they were living in beautiful downtown Elizabeth, New Jersey. Have you ever been to Elizabeth, New Jersey? Right. So, but here's the thing, you guys. I didn't care at all. I did not. He could have had 75 teenagers, and I would have been like, it's great. Bring it. Love is enough. I was so madly, deeply in love. So I was spending all of this time, and trust me, meeting Vic was the best thing that happened in the next year's story. So I'm going to try to make the rest of it not as painful as it actually was, but it only goes down from here. So I meet him, and about 3 months later, my father, who wasn't sick at all, 61 years old, just suddenly drops dead of a heart attack. This was so stressful, so bad, so horrible. And Vic was super supportive. And now Vic's beautiful wife, Donna, died at the age of 29 when he had a 5, a 3, and a 9-month-old. So by the time I came in with these teenage kids, it was like 12 or 13 years later. And so those cute little babies became like acting out animals, okay? They were not disrespectful to me, but they were pissed about life. Who blames them, right? So after my father dies, I have 3 older sisters. I go to Florida to help clean out his house. And I feel this crazy lump. I can't even explain what it was. I felt like there wasn't enough room in my throat for everything that was in there. So I call my mother, and she's not a doctor at all, but she thinks she is. So she gets her book, and she's like, oh, look, I know what it is. You have a goiter. Don't worry, it's nothing. It's a thyroid thing. You're good. She's like, just go see the doctor when you get home. So I get home, and I go see the doctor, and in fact, of course, it's not a goiter, or I wouldn't be telling you this story. It was a malignant tumor the size of a plum. So now, are you remembering that the guy I just fell in love with, his wife died of cancer, and that every other woman who we ever brought into this home situation with these kids left? So of course, this wasn't just me being diagnosed with cancer, which was effing terrifying, P.S. I hope it never happens to you. And if you want to know how it was, not fun at all. But it was more than not fun. It was more than terrifying for me, because now it's not just me. Now I'm madly and deeply in love with these teenage kids who are just acting like idiots, but I know that they're madly, deeply in love with me too, and I'm a psychotherapist, so I understand that they're acting out and blah, blah, blah. So now, what is their life experience? Women die or leave, that's it. So finally, I'd never been married. I was like taking it on, like, yes. I mean, you guys, it was kind of perfect, no stretch marks. I'm like, they're already teenagers, great. Like, I get to influence them for like 5 years, and I get to be a grandmother one day, right on. I highly recommend it if you guys haven't thought about it, So imagine them. Oh, of course she's gonna die, because the women in our life, they only die and leave, that's all they do. So there was so much to this experience that was terrifying. But I was also really up for the challenge, and I wanted to be strong for them. So let's say 3 months after this, so I have to have surgery, radiation, but I'm still like, it's fine, it's great, it's okay. I'm getting them into family therapy, I'm redoing this old house, because it's a potentially beautiful house. Not beautiful when I got there, orange wallpaper, so bad. So I was literally systematically, and it was kind of a parallel process where I'm systematically redoing this house, redoing the family system with them, making them all get into therapy immediately, and dealing with what was happening for me as well. So now it's about 3 months later, and I get a clean bill of health. They're like, you are perfectly healthy. I was like, great, we're just gonna move on, except not really. Because I kept having this feeling like something was wrong. I didn't physically feel unwell, but in my heart, I was like, I feel like something is still wrong. So all the doctors were like, well, you're crazy, bye. So I just kept doctor shopping, surgeon shopping in New York City until I found a surgeon who was willing to simply take out the other half of my thyroid based on my non-medical intuition. So I find the right guy. he does it. As I get this, the pathology back the second time, the first time I was a total cancer virgin. So when the doctor says, it's malignant, I was like, oh, is that the good one? He was like, okay, that's not exactly the good one. But I mean, I literally didn't even know the difference between malignant and benign, because I thought if something were wrong, wouldn't someone have called me? It was 10 days after my surgery. I never heard from anyone. I was like, obviously I'm fine, or somebody would have picked up the phone. And when I went and sat with that first surgeon, he literally says to my face, I haven't even looked at the pathology yet. I was like, oh, how about you just pretend you care? You could have looked at it 1 second before I walked in and been like, I've been studying this for 10 days. I would never have known, right? But instead, he wanted to make sure I knew how little he cared. I was like, okay, thanks. How about look at it now? We'll both be surprised. So when he said malignant, I was like, wow, I don't know what that is. This time around, when he said, the new good surgeon said, interesting pathology, I was like, oh, interesting, that means it's malignant, right? He was like, not only did we find a new malignancy, it was a totally different kind of cancer that could move to lungs and bones. I was like, wow, good thing we went with my non-medical intuition, right? He's like, yeah, good thing. So now this is a little heavy. Now I'm moving into having to do the same exact surgery again. Can you imagine? It's not even 6 months. Horrible. Radiation, being isolated. You have to actually have to be quarantined when you have this amount of radiation. It was crazy. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to live through it, but great. Next, we're moving on to, so now it's 3 months later. I'm getting to sort of the end of what's happening, and everything is brightening up. Family therapy is kind of working. I'm like, oh, good. That was just a really amazing, started as an amazing year, got kind of rough, but it's going to be great. So Vic and I were going out to celebrate what I like to say is the second happiest day of my life, which is the day we got engaged. And I know it was like 20 years ago, and I still want to be like, hi, I want to see my engagement ring. Like, I'm totally that chick still. Because I'd never thought I was going to get married. So I was like, this shit is a miracle. You have no idea. So we're going out to actually celebrate our engagement. And Vic is in the car, and it's pitch black. It's a summer night. And I run into the house. I just had to pee. So I hear him say my name in this really weird way. And he's a very patient person. He's a Pisces, so you know what I mean when I say that. Super chill. And I had just gotten out of the car, and he said, Tara? So I yell out the window, oh, hey, I'm just washing my hands. I'll be right there. And he literally, so I get up, I come out, and all I can see is the funnels of light from the car. It's pitch black, and I can't really make out what I'm seeing, but it looks like a person. It looks like a wedge of a human like this. And I'm looking, because the boys were all very tall. I thought maybe it was one of the kids kidding around. And when I look up, I realize that this person has a stocking covering their face. And he's crouching down, and he's kneeling on Vic's back, and he has a gun to the back of Vic's head. And so we got robbed at gunpoint, basically in our home, with one of the kids in the house. And that is what I like to say completed my PhD in fear. Because I went from being super fearless to being paralyzed. And I didn't really know what to do. I was doing all the therapy things, but nothing made me feel safe. Not my pit bull. All right, to be fair, she was only half pit bull and wouldn't hurt anyone, so that didn't help at all. I had a knife next to my bed, even when Vic was home, right? Even when the boys were home, I felt unsafe. Vic tricked out the entire house with this crazy security system that had a panic button behind the bed. Didn't help, because the fear was living in my mind. And this was the moment that I was on my knees, and I knew I needed help. So I called my friends in the community, people who I had helped. And I looked online, I was like, somebody must have an experience like this. And I found this woman named Rhonda Britton. Is anyone familiar with Rhonda's work? So she has a platform called Fearless Living, and she had a story that was even more horrendous than my story, where she actually was the only witness to her father killing her mother with a shotgun in front of her eyes when she was like 14 years old. And so I reached out to Rhonda, I started getting involved with her work, and it really, really helped me. But I understand now from that experience how difficult it can be to ask for help. And every single one of you in this room who paid money for these tickets, who's been raising money for God's Love We Deliver, for Big Love Weekend, you are helping those people that, can you imagine how hard it might have been for them to pick up the phone and say, I can't cook for my children. I have breast cancer. So God's Love doesn't just come and say, well, hi, here's a sandwich for you. They bring food and feed her kids. This is not just doing a service. This is giving dignity back to people who need dignity. So I just want to end my time with you by saying thank you so much for being such an incredible part of the solution, and by not only giving generously with your wallet, but giving generously of your hearts. You are so appreciated.